Well, it is an exciting weekend to be here for Mother's Day weekend. I think that mothering is very important. Amen? Yes, it's the hardest job I ever did. I want you to know 24/7 is a hard job, but it's also very wonderful. And it results in souls for Jesus, and that's a wonderful mission too. I'm taking care of my 91-year-old mother right now. We sold our house in 3 days, and we moved into a senior apartment where my mother lives in the apartment right below us, which is very interesting. If we get noisy, she can bang on the ceiling with her broomstick and tell us to quiet down. And if I am too noisy, she wants to know what I'm doing. It's very interesting being there. And one of the things that I also found out is, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence today, is that caring for a 91-year-old mother really shows how impatient you can be. When she reads every ingredient on the can and you've got only 20 minutes to go grocery shopping with her, and you tell her for the third time how to take a medicine or whatever, and she still doesn't get it, like last night. And this is one where she couldn't, do you see my mother in the bottom right there? That was where I'm holding her shoe. She couldn't find her phone. And I had to search all over her apartment. Well, when she had taken her clothes to the closet the night before, she slipped the phone in her shoe. And so I kept calling it, and it was ringing in her closet. And I found it for her, and she was really embarrassed. But she says, things happen when you get older. And she's going to be moving with us. And this is my family, and Carlo's only been in our family about 6 years, but he got married this year. She said, now that I saw him get married, now I can die. I'm like, no, you're not dying yet. We got some plans for you. And I just think that what we need to know about mothering is, the commandment about mother and father, honor what? That what? Well, I want you to know that there are studies that have shown that when you honor your mother and your father, that your days are longer on this earth. Did you know that? So are theirs. And people who have healthy family relationships with their mother actually have better income levels, better lives, and more stable life. And then there was another study, and that was in the Loma Linda area, and that was about the Sabbath. This is a great day to have your mother with you on the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is when Adventists often do some things, and they found out that the blue zones, where the people are living to their 100s, many of them take nature walks, they praise God, they eat well, they fellowship, they visit the sick, they do all these things on Sabbath, and they believe that the Sabbath day elongated their lives. So if you love your parents and you honor the Sabbath, you'll have a longer life, generally. So very important. Some of you are probably missing your moms today because they're not here or they're passed, and that's sad too. But thank heaven that we all had a parent, right, that loved us, hopefully. And I just wanted to show you that we're building a house in Tennessee, and that's my mother's room is on the left side. So I want you to know I'm bringing my mother with me, and my bedroom's on the right side. So she's very excited, and we're going to have a living room in between us. And she's not quiet. Well, neither am I, but she's less quiet than I am, and she has a lot to tell us all the time, even if we only had 30 seconds to find out something. So we're going to try and live in unity and happiness. And I love my mother. She's a great lady. She's perky, and honestly, 91. This week, I took her with me to a friend's house who was cleaning out her house for an estate issue. She's moving. And we had lunch together, and on the way home, my mother said, wasn't that a great day? Didn't we have fun? Wasn't it wonderful to be outside in the beautiful sunshine? Didn't we just have a great time with the girls? And I'm just like, let me be that optimistic when I'm that age. So watch what you say and how you think, because it will impact your life, and you'll either have a more stable life or not. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I wish that I could tell you on this subject that I got it all together. I don't. Every day is a new day about how you're going to live your life. And God, in his wisdom, knows exactly what you're capable of, and you have to talk to him to make sure that you are doing what he wants you to do. Because God can change the way that you're thinking. And guess what? We can really mess things up when we're doing it on our own strength. So I also want you to know that what we're talking about is very biblical. You may not think about that at the very beginning of this sermon, but let me tell you that we're going to only talk about the Bible here in a little while, and I hope that you can see the screen well, because I'm going to have you talking about those verses. There's nothing like reciting verses so that it gets in your brain. There's just some power there. So know that we're going to do that. A man was flying in his airplane, and when he got up there, he hadn't been told by the control tower that there was any problem. And when he got up into the clouds, he realized with his passengers that he was in a bad storm. In fact, it was really bad. He could see lightning and everything, but once you're in a storm cloud like that, you better get through it. And so he just barreled right through, hoping that maybe the other side would be better. Now, one of the things was that when he looked out the window, he could see the horizon, he thought, and he could see that his airplane was going upside down. And his feelings were that he needed to right his airplane so that it would be flying correctly. But his instruments said that he was not flying correctly, he was flying correctly, and that he should not turn. What would he obey? His instruments or his hunches? It was hard to deny that he had emotions about it, because it just felt right to bank the way that he wanted to. He'd been trained in flight school that you never go according to your feelings and emotions, that you should do what your instruments tell you to do. But he was really worried. He had, people on board, and he didn't want to make a mistake. And would his instrument panel be telling him the right thing, or could it be broken? And if he leveled his wings a certain way, what would happen? And so, even though he had a lot of trepidation, he didn't do anything. He just continued to fly the way the instrument panel told him to fly. And that was a good thing, because when he got out of the storm clouds, he realized that what he'd seen was a false horizon. Had the pilot followed his feelings, he would have put the plane in a nosedive toward the mountains below, and he would have been killed, and so would all the people that were on the plane with him. Thankfully, he went by the instrument panel. My husband and I, we were in Kalamazoo at our church, and my daughter was 6 and having her birthday party with her friends from Lansing. 2 of her friends were sisters. And just before the party ended, I got a call from her grandparents, and they said, I want you to know that Amanda and Leisha are going to be picked up by their aunt and uncle, not by their parents today. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, we want you to know their parents were on their way to Beaver Island this last weekend. They never arrived. They're with the other 2 girls that you have there, their aunt and uncle, and all of them we can't find. We don't know what's happened. Well, over the months, they did lots of searches. They wondered where they were, and it was really devastating. What they believe is because they were new pilots and they had rented an airplane to go to Beaver Island, and they weren't using their instrument panels. It was a very dismal, gray day, and that they probably just went through that atmosphere and didn't realize where the sky was versus where the lake was, and they probably flew right into the lake. And a piece of the airplane washed up in Petoskey several months later. So they were all perished. And when you start to think about that, some of you have had an experience where it's been really devastating, and you have this little trigger when you hear something. Because we went through that trauma, all of a sudden I hear triggers whenever I hear about airplanes lost. Do you know how many planes are down in the Great Lakes? And you can also Google it and find out that many of them perished because they weren't using their instrument panels. John, remember John F. Kennedy's son? That was another thing. He flew right into the water. Emotions are very similar to our instrument panels. Like, emotions are like a roller coaster. They go up and down. But our instrument panel is our brain and our logic that God has given us. Emotions were never meant to be your controls. They were meant to be a gauge. And emotions are not a guiding system. And yet, if you let your emotions guide you through life, I'm telling you that you have an 80% chance of having a very unstable life. There was a man named Daniel Goleman, and he thinks that HIT was his big idea. He was on the New York bestseller list for 2 years, and he said that they found out that it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter who your parents were. It doesn't matter how wealthy you were or where you were born or whatever, that even if you're intelligent, if you do not use your logic rather than your emotions, if you are using your emotions, you will have an unstable life. And it means that if you learn to use what God gave you, the logic that God gave you, you will have an 80% chance at a stable life. How much? 80% chance. Isn't that amazing? Emotional intelligence is not only when a person is aware of their emotions, but they control their emotions, they have good social skills, and they're able to understand other people's emotions. They're more sensitive to how other people are feeling, and they don't let obstacles stop them. They persevere despite the fact that they don't feel good or that they have a problem. They get through their goals. That's very important. So I hope, can you read this on the screen? So can I have you, because I want to make sure that you get this, can I have you read this with me? Just a moment. I'm going to read the title, People with High Emotional Intelligence. Okay, and now I want you to do it with me. Express they feel more fulfilled in their life, have stronger, healthier relationships with others. They maintain friendships better, are more creative, show more confidence, are better communicators, act with more integrity in situations, are less likely to lie, cheat, or steal, perform better at work, get along with their fellow employees. Their fellow employees would say they admire this person and believe they are an effective leader. Is that what you would want? Wow, I would like that on my epitaph, wouldn't you? Wow. Well, do you think that those are Christian things? I think every one of them is a Christian thing, isn't it? So that's very interesting. Actually, American companies have literally spent millions of dollars trying to get their employees to act emotionally intelligent because they find out that people are much happier in their businesses, they practice more integrity, they sell more because people trust them, and it makes that company more profitable. But I guess that I would want to say, wouldn't you want people on your board or on your officer trainings or whatever to be the same way? Let's go to this next one. High emotional intelligence is a better predictor of success than intelligence, because people with high emotional intelligence are what? Calm, peaceful, positive, assertive, and forgiving. Is that Christian? Absolutely. Low emotional intelligence, they're more reactive, but do we have anybody who's reactive out there in the world? Yeah. Anxious, negative, aggressive, holds grudges. It doesn't matter who you are. The world right now is anxious. It used to be something like 2 out of 10. Now it's like 6 out of 10 will have some kind of anxiety issue going on. Very sad. We are really struggling with our mental health. They keep wondering, why is it that America seems to be having so many problems? You know why? Because our mental health isn't very healthy. So you give them a problem like COVID, and it's like lighting a dynamite. All right, here's some more. People with high emotional intelligence are hard to offend. Do we get a little offended here in the U.S.? Hoo-hoo. We make a lot of programs about that, don't we? They're more self-confident. They're not having a hard time making a decision. They have good boundaries. By the way, some people go, well, shouldn't people know when they ask me 5 times to do something that I'm not going to do it? And then they give in after the 5th time, like, no, you have to star in your own show and you have to decide what your boundary is. Other people will manipulate you because maybe they don't have a good boundary, right? And they're decisive. But a low emotionally intelligent person, will you read it with me, is easily offended, fearful, practices loose boundaries, and struggles with making decisions. By the way, I had a counseling person this week, and they are so overwhelmed they can't make a decision about anything. And the way we killed the paralysis is we came up with 10 options, silly or not, and then we took out some of those, and then they were left with 2 or 3. There's nothing like moving forward and recognizing that you don't have to be right every time you make a decision. You make a decision, and after you make it, you decide, is this where I want to be? Is this okay? We have the ability to change our minds at times, right? Something men think about women, yeah. But the truth is, we learn by doing. I have an awful lot of teens that go, I don't know what I want to do for life, I just don't know. And I'm like, sitting in your room and playing games is not going to help you. Going to college, going to a trade school, you will know, right? Working a job and figuring out what you don't like is much more important than just, thinking about it. So, very important. Where do we learn our emotional intelligence? Guess what? This is where we love to blame our parents. Really? If every day is a new day and God has given us a future and not a past, then we should not be blaming our parents. It is our choice today what we're going to do. Actually, the past is an indicator of what we might do in our future, but it is not a plan that we have to go by, right? Very important. We learn things from faulty humans, and we often repeat their mistakes, right? It's a heritage, but you leave a legacy of what you choose to do. And there are many people, wonderful people, who've had terrible upbringings, and yet they chose a different way to act with their kids and with their spouses. It's wonderful when you see people changing the way they're going to do things, especially when with God's will, we can do anything, right? Amen? We can change anytime. It's really important. And, a lot of people are getting some of their emotional intelligence from television, which is about revenge and doing sneaky things. And by the way, the devil loves to influence our behavior, doesn't he? Here's some other things. They've learned that some people, you don't even talk to them about emotional intelligence. You just put them on a healthy diet, do the New Start program, like you have a program coming up that's going to teach people about health. Some people who will test out very low emotional intelligence when they are eating and doing the right things without any lecturing, just feeling better, they will make more emotionally intelligent decisions. Isn't that interesting? We had an Adventist in California that allowed prisoners to have plant-based foods if they would choose. They met with a dietitian and they talked to them. Some people said, absolutely not. And others said, well, why not? Why not improve? And what they started to separate those who were eating a plant-based diet. And what they found is even though they had problems every day, they coped with them and they seemed to make decisions that were wise rather than criminal-like. So just by changing that, how many of you know what it's like when you're around somebody who hasn't been sleeping very well? When you were a child, you knew when kids got cranky, right? Or when they were hungry. But some of them, they still do that when they grow up, right? They choose not to sleep and they're still cranky. So very important that everything that we do can impact our emotional intelligence. Would you read this with me? Because I think that there's nothing like this wonderful author. Are you ready? Satan will, if he is unsuspected, give feelings and impressions. These are not correct and safe guides. So what do we learn that our emotions can be impacted by who? And these are not what? Correct. You choose what you're going to act on. Every day, it's a decision that you make. The other thing is, okay, you've heard of the emotions, and there's all kinds of them. If, like a rainbow, there's primary colors, but there's also secondary colors. Well, we have major emotions, which would be sad, mad, glad, fear. Okay? When we are holding on to fear or sadness or anger for a period of time, it hurts our body. It impacts our chemicals in our brain. It makes little grooves into our transmitters in our brain so that we go down those things all the time. The Lord wants to change that. But the Bible tells us all the time that we need to rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Is that about what? Joy. Joy is the healthiest emotion that you can have. We need our emotions. We need to feel the feelings that we are having. But as soon as we are done thinking about what we need to do, we need to move into joy. And some of you go, I don't know. I don't think I can change my mind. Really? God wants to change your mind. Just by what you're thinking, you can change your mind. If I said to you, think about when somebody scolded you, and then I asked you, how did you feel? What would you say? I'm hurt, angry, frustrated, right? So then I say to you, let's talk about sometime that somebody complimented you and said something. How do you feel? And you would say, happy, good, feeling well, whatever. And how long did that take? 30 seconds? Good illustration. We have the ability, with God's help, to change how we are feeling by the way we're thinking. Did you get that? We have the ability to change the way we're feeling by what? The way we are thinking. By the way, people who think about sad, mad, angry, fear, they are impacting their bodies in such a way that physically they have problems. Did you know that? Physically. I could put on a huge list, but I only found research for these things. People who have problems with strokes, headaches, ulcers, diseases, and disorders, and numerous other illnesses shorten their lives because those are very bad for them. But also, men have more problems with cardiac problems, and women have more problems with gastrointestinal problems when they're in this state. Somehow I'm starting to feel like I've talked about this here at this church. I hope that I haven't. But you know what? To me, this is such an important lesson. We need to really think about it and keep it in our brains. We are literally killing ourselves by allowing our brain to take us on a trip and just considering how it feels because of what we're thinking. We have to take back our lives. How is it that we can take care of ourselves? Very important to do the basics that we need to do from health as well as changing our minds. How a person takes care of themselves will impact how they are feeling. If they're negative, pessimistic, crabby, difficult to get along with, very important. You really need to think about that. And you know what? If it makes you live a shorter life because you don't work on this, isn't that kind of passive suicidal? I know that I'm not healthy when I do this, but I want to do it because I just really love to keep on going and obsessing about things that people have done to me and the grievances and why it wasn't right. Like, of course, you're right, right? It wasn't right. Do we live in a fair world? What's wrong with us when we think everybody has to act fair? We live with sinners, right? We are one ourselves, are we not? And we are not fair. God gives us mercy. We need to give people mercy. There is a Bible verse that says, "There is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof is the ways of death." So we need to recognize that when we slow ourselves down and we do not do the healthy things, we're making ourselves sick. Let's read this together, okay? A contented mind, a cheerful spirit, is strength to the soul. Now, when do you think this was written? After the research came in at Yale? No. There was an author that knew and had God telling her things, and this was very important. And some of us have probably read some of these things, but we just didn't think about emotional intelligence. Let's read this, because we were just talking about how when you think that way and you act in an unhealthy way, that you get really sick. So let's read this next part. Nothing is so fruitful a cause of disease as depression, gloominess, and sadness. You know what? That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It's well researched. Can you imagine if Jesus let all of that bullying and those people that were trying to trip him up, if he had just let that have havoc in his brain? Really, Jesus was emotionally intelligent. He really worked to try and look over people's mistakes, accept people where they were, and to love them so that he could persevere where he was going. Very important. Only God knows all the answers, and he will help us, because it says in John 8:31 and 32, if you abide in my word, you will know the truth, and the truth will what? Do you know the truth today? Are there things here that you recognize that you need to be working on? I hope so. I hope the Lord is talking to your heart. According to the Britannica, and it sounds crazy to me, the body sends 11 million bits of sensory information to our brain every day. I can't imagine that. It would drive us all crazy, right? How can we not be impressed with a creator that has allowed us to have brains that can take in so much? But we all have an amygdala. You want to say that? Point to your temples. We have an amygdala, okay? What is this? And where is it? All right. The amygdala is when somebody says something that irritates us or has a reaction, it goes to our amygdala. Our amygdala is just where it's sent, and blood and oxygen are sent there. The devil also sends a little anger with it, I'm pretty convinced. So, it also organizes some kind of memory. Have you ever gotten mad about something little simple and then you realize it's because of something that somebody did to you in the past and that brought up an old thing? Yeah, kind of frustrating. Well, on each side of our brain, this amygdala will often be reactive. You know, some of the ways that we get over mental health problems is to do the positive things, which is like maybe the fruits of the Spirit, which are, kindness, gentleness, peace, etc. Because that does not come into our amygdala. The Bible is telling us to do something different there. But let's talk about, there were some Bible people that had amygdala problems. Are you ready? Who's this? How do you know? He's holding the commandments. What did he do with those commandments? He broke them. You think he did that with his amygdala? He saw the people and they made him angry, and poof, something God gave him, right? By the way, did Moses do any other impulsive things? He broke the commandments on the rock of he didn't break a commandment. He broke the commandment tablet stone. What else did he do? He struck the rock more than he was supposed to. And what else? He killed an Egyptian. He murdered an Egyptian. So was Moses a bad man? When you admire people, do you admire Moses? Because after a while, God worked with him, and what happened? He became an awesome leader, didn't he? He loved the people. He sacrificed. He mourned for them. He wanted the best for them. He pleaded for them. What does that tell you about people who are doing the wrong thing? There's hope for all of us, isn't there? All right, there was another one. Simon Peter. Simon Peter did a few things. What did he do? He Cut somebody's ear off. What else did he do? Denied Christ not one, not two, but 3 times. What about jumping out of a boat? Here I am. Whew. And he went down in the waves. Do you remember that? Was he impulsive? People who are impulsive are using their amygdalas, by the way. Was he using his amygdala? Yeah. But what happened to him after a while? How many of you read some of the things he's written? How many of you recognize that his words were inspired by God and that he was used a blessing? And what does that tell us? There's hope for all of us, right? Paul and Silas, they were sitting in stocks. They probably couldn't go to the bathroom. They could have had a mosquito on their nose. They probably were getting tired or whatever. But because of the way that they didn't let their emotions get in the way, because they thought about God and how suffering was, part of his life, they actually had joy in their stocks. Can you believe that? Joy. And they were singing. Thank heaven, Jesus didn't lose his cool and stayed focused on where he was going. Very important. When I was a little girl, my mother told me not to eat the olives or anything on the table before the guests came to the table. So I didn't eat them. I just sniffed them. I picked up one olive and I looked at it and it looked really good. And I noticed that it had a little hole in it and it fit on my finger just perfectly. And I wondered if all the other ones would fit on my finger too. And so I put those little olives on all of my fingers. And you know what? They all fit. And then my mother came in to bring some pretty china dish in there with some food on the table. And she looked at me and she said, "Laurie, I told you not to eat anything." And I said, "I didn't eat anything. I just tried them on. I thought they looked really good on my fingers. They were so cute." And my mother said, "Don't put them in. You've already ruined them. Your hands are dirty." And I said, "No, my hands aren't dirty." And she said, "Don't put them in the bowl. Nobody's going to eat them after they're on your fingers." So then she said, "But I don't want them to go to waste. So why don't you eat them?" And I went, "Okay." Well, the first one was really good. The second one was good too, but the third one I started to get full and she said, "Keep eating." My mother, I told her, "You're such a mean mother." And by the time I'd eaten my 10th, I'd had enough of those olives. I never wanted to see another olive ever again. In my adulthood, every time somebody does haystacks, that's like a Sabbath thing. Or somebody would make a pizza, they always put olives on it. Or they'd have a salad, they always put olives on my salad. And it's not that they taste bad, there's just something about them that I would look at them and I would feel, ugh. And what I realized is that my amygdala, when I look at those olives, selected this memory of when I had to eat all of those olives, and I wasn't even aware of it until I started working about what the amygdala does. Isn't that interesting? Recognize that sometimes when you're really frustrated, at the moment that you're frustrated, well, chances are you've had some experience. So when we are in our amygdala, it is not a good time to fix anything. You're in your jot behaviors, jump to conclusions, you overreact, you take it personally. You ever been cut off on the road? If you're in your amygdala, you might put your hand up and gesture, you might put up a fist, you might try to run them off the road, you might chase them down the road, who knows what you might do, right? That's the amygdala working. You know what? God says that we're supposed to love our brothers and sisters, even those who cut us off, right? Wow. Let's read this, okay? Anyone, are you with me? Anyone who hates his own brother is subject to judgment. And anyone who says, "You fool," will be in danger of hell. Does that mean that there's only certain people that applies to? Ooh. Yes, we are tempted to honk the horn at people, aren't we? And by the way, my loving husband, I had only been married for 2 weeks when he honked the horn at me. And I was mad. We had come back from our honeymoon and we were saying, sweetie, honey, lovey, sweet, mushy, ushy. And I was in my 3rd floor apartment. We started at Waterford area. And when he honked that horn at me, and I was doing a casserole dish, getting it ready for potluck, and he wasn't there, and he was just thinking about getting to the church, I ran down so fast, I guess I could run down steps really fast then. We were on the 3rd floor. And I remember him rolling the window down. You know how to roll the window, they had to use it. Yeah. And he looked at me, and I said, why don't you just go to church without your new bride today, and let's just see how your career goes. My husband's eyes, I still remember. I've never seen eyes that open that wide. He was in shock. What he didn't know, and what I wasn't realizing, is that my dad did that to my mom all of my life when I was young on Sabbath morning. He would honk the horn, and my mother would come out and say, Henry, did you pick up the breakfast dishes and get them all cleaned up so you could have company today? No, I didn't do that. And she said, you have time to just sit in the car and honk your horn. You'd go, yep. And she'd go back in the house. Beep, beep, beep. He'd come back out, and she'd say, Henry, did you get the Bible and the quarterly? No, I must have forgotten those. And she'd say, and I'm going to have to go get them, and that's why I'm late. So she'd close the door. And he'd laugh. He'd look at me in the rearview mirror and go, she sure is mad. Loves to agitate. And I probably said, my husband will never do that to me, right? What Royce didn't know was that I was probably in my amygdala, and I had that trigger, and so everything is worse than it really is. I wish that I had read this first, so let's read this. Fools vent their anger, but the wise quietly hold it back, means, right, button the lip. Let's do this other one. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook the insult. You see, the Bible is full of these verses, Let's read this one. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Here's another one. Be angry and don't sin. Does it say stop being angry? God gave us emotions for a reason. I mean, when we're angry, we really usually have something to do, or we need to think about something. It doesn't say stop. It says be angry, but what? And then it says, do not let the sun go down in your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil, because the devil loves to take an opportunity. What will you say and what will you do that will destroy your relationship and hurt people? Very important. Here's a good one. It reminds us that God has given us the spirit of what? Self-control. Did you know that when you became a committed Christian, that you got self-control given to you? But most of us are not utilizing what God has given us. So when we have a problem in our what? Within a few nanoseconds, it goes to our frontal lobe. And this is what's in our frontal lobe. Our reasoning, our problem solving, our conscience, our impulse control, our social behavior. If we wait and are slow, didn't we just say be slow to anger, slow to speak, slow? God was trying to tell us, I made you this way. When we think about this, we will be much more intelligent about what we choose to do. And when we delay our reaction and using our reasoning, we wouldn't want to hurt people. We are wiser about what we say. By the way, watch out what substances you use. Alcohol, marijuana, drugs in any form impact that frontal lobe. Even caffeine does. That impedes the conscience. And so people are more likely to act in a difficult manner, angry, irritable, say something that they wish they hadn't said. So back to our illustration of someone cutting us off. If we let it go to our frontal lobe, we might be listening to God, we might be praying, we might say, that person looks like they're in a much bigger hurry. We might say, they're not very emotionally intelligent, I'm not going to act like them, instead of reacting. And we might also say, you know what, that's a child of God, I need to pray for them. Or perhaps they did it accidentally. Or maybe they've had a really bad day. I need to think about that. You know what, God gave us mercy, we need to give others what? Mercy. That's right. So let's read this one. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, and keep watch over the door of my lips. A gentle answer, what? Turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up. Avoiding a fight brings honor to a man, but every foolish person is what? Quick. And when they're quick, they're using what part of their brain? The amygdala, you got it. A quarrelsome person starts fights as easily as hot embers light charcoal or fire lights wood. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Does this make sense? Have you seen these verses before? You weren't paying attention? It didn't make a difference? A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who's slow to anger calms a dispute. An angry man stirs up dissension, and a hot-tempered man abounds in transgression. Yes. We need to put the stoplights on because we don't want to sin. We don't want to destroy relationships. We don't want to hurt people. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body. When we're sad, we need to grieve. When we're fearful, we need to maybe put in a boundary, or maybe we need to turn around and run. When we're angry, we need to think about what's going on and what's happening in our amygdala. Why is it that we're so frustrated? But joy is the healthiest emotion. We can choose joy. We can read all those verses that say to rejoice and have joy in your heart. Very important. We can change the way we're thinking just by being grateful. When David sinned with Bathsheba, he said to God, restore unto me the joy of my salvation. There is importance in that joy. Remember the song about may your joy be full? Or, joy, joy, joy in my heart, right? All these things are all about joy. Do you realize how much energy you use when you're getting angry? And when we let God have our burdens, the Lord wants to give us energy. So think about it. This is a little acronym. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Boy, wouldn't that be nice? My husband was looking at his phone, and I was trying to tell him how to get to a place. And I was really frustrated that he kept looking at his phone. Anybody feel ignored sometimes? I even teased my son that I need to put a hook on my head with a cell phone there so I could pretend he's looking at my eyes instead of his phone. And I wanted to be so mad at my husband because he wasn't listening. I wanted to go, excuse me, or here I am right here, or, are you listening? Are you listening? Repeat after me. And I was really getting huffy, but I was working on this seminar, and I thought I better not do anything, or I'll have to do an illustration about it. And so I could even just, slam the door, and then he asked, is everything okay? I could have gone, nope, everything's fine. Yeah, right? Say what you mean is mean what you say. But then my husband said, Laurie, somebody sent me this video about a black and white cat, and I know how much you love black and white cats, and I've been looking for it so I could show it to you. Oh, he was thinking about me while he was on that phone, huh? Made me feel really guilty. The truth is that I could have said something and I could have really ruined it, and yet he was doing something nice for me. Isn't that how it is? Jumping to conclusions, what does that mean? And I just want you to know, we celebrated our 43rd anniversary last year. I'm just thankful he stuck with me. And he wants me to also tell people that he never honked the horn at me ever again. He says that's really important that you finish that up. Okay. Here's the verse, Philippians 1:27. It says, let's read it together. Whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. God is available 24/7 to us. He will help us with our emotions. He will come over and give us an example to live by. When we're reading, when we're doing the things he's asking us to do, we will have healthier, more stable lives. And when we are healthy and stable, we can influence people better because we are stable and showing that we are being more Christ-like in our lives. I want to be more stable, do you? God can make us more stable. With Christ, I can do all things through Christ that what? Strengthens me. Remember, he's a connection that will help you to have the stable life that you desire.